Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. Jeremy Werner, Joey Wagner. We're back home, back on video for better or worse. I don't know if that's a good thing, but you can check it out on the YouTube channel if you haven't already. And it is almost August. We're recording this on July 31st. And August means football, at least practicing football, is back in our lives. We just had Big Ten Media Days. We will talk about that. And we got 10 questions entering training camp. We are ready for fresh quotes. We got some fresh quotes at Big Ten Media Days, Joey. Feels like we've been counting down for training camp for so long. And August 3rd, here on Thursday, it finally starts. How you feeling about it?
I am ready. Like, Media Day was a nice reminder that our work is about to pick up quite a bit, but also that there's just going to be more information, more quotes, more access. I'm excited, man. It's weird, Jeremy, to quickly tangent. You've done this for longer than I have. I'm going into my 6th year, I think. I'm not very good at math. Like, this is the most excitement. Like, there's always a level of like, oh, it's football season. Like, this feels like pretty real excitement beyond just, hey, football's coming back, because that usually peters out by the end of October. But it does feel like there's some legitimate excitement around this program and the direction of it.
Yeah, it was usually the diehards that cared about this, the football fans. Basketball is obviously the thing that gets the most traffic here. It's the thing that gets people most excited because of the history of basketball and their relationship with basketball and the success that they have had. Like, there's more fretting about Illinois basketball, even though it's a better program right now than football, because they think football or basketball should have those expectations. That's the history. That's the expectation that Brett Underwood has hit. But football, I do believe for the first time, Joey, like, we are entering a year where there's excitement about what they're going to be. Like, not just hope, but like actual rational excitement that Illinois football is a good Big Ten football team. And it has been probably since Ron Zook led Illinois into 2008, and the journey was following Illinois. And then they, let's just call it what it is, they crapped the bed with a 5-7 season. And that's been the history of Illinois football and why fans are guarded. And I wrote about it today about the sustained success. Like, it's eluded Illinois for so long, but this year there's reason to believe, because of what Bret Bielema's built, how he's built it, what he's built it on, that maybe they can sustain that success. And that in the final year of the Big Ten West, they can be a player. So I agree with you. I feel like the engagement from the fan base, the belief of the fan base, is as high as it's been in a long time.
It is. And the people in the Smith Center are doing a lot to drum that up. I wrote about that out of Media Days because it's something I've wanted to ask Bret Bielema for a while. There's confidence. It's real confidence that's coming from the program. Bret Bielema will throw some elbows on Twitter if he has to. His players aren't far behind. Johnny Newton is pretty vocal himself, especially if a defensive lineman ranking does not meet his expectations, I guess. And I think that permeates me. I think the fans feel that. And I think when Bret goes on Twitter and does his thing, I think he's speaking more to his guys in that building, and he's trying to get a fan base to follow suit and to share that excitement and that confidence. Because to be honest, like, this fan base hasn't been given a reason to have a lot of confidence on it's almost October or August 1st. Like, that's just not been the case. And I think Brett's trying to change, like, I feel like he's changed the building a little bit in the way that they think. Now he's trying to like expand that footprint out to the fan base. And I think it's working. Now, still a lot of football to be played, and they haven't played a game yet, but I do think that starts in the Smith Center and branches out from there.
Yeah. And let's be honest, it's just, there's always hope when Lovie Smith gets here, there's hope. And then the North Carolina game happens and Mitch Trubisky tears you up, and it's just, you're not there. And then you make the bowl game and there was some flukiness to it. And then you follow it up with 2-5. And
do you remember the conversations before training camp got postponed the first time in 2020? Like, there was legitimate I remember talking to Sidney Brown on the phone, and like, there was legitimate, hey, we're good here. And that didn't manifest. So like, that's where I understand if fans are like, hey, we've seen this before. I just think you've got to maybe read. So I didn't mean to cut you off. You just got to read what's different there, or what feels different.
Well, and why you kind of started to believe, for me, was just the talent. The talent was there, and you're starting to see all these young guys who had played for so long. getting experience and that experience paying off, and they won a couple close games. So you went into that COVID year thinking this team's got a chance. I think I projected them go 5-3 that year. The schedule wasn't that difficult, but they just got blown out at Wisconsin, never really came back from that. And the coaching staff just wasn't very strong. And I think that's what gives me confidence here is I don't know if the talent is way better than that 2020 year based on what Lovie Smith was getting in the transfer portal. Some of the guys he recruited, I mean, talking about Sidney Brown and Quan Martin and Devin Witherspoon, like we thought they could break through. But the coaching just didn't match it up. In the last 2 years, I think what we've seen is that this is a pretty good coaching staff that's going to get Illinois into close games. What's the difference of the record? I mean, Illinois probably could have been 7-5 Bielema's first year. They were close to, there's a path where they could have been like 10-2 and won the Big Ten West last year. It's just how you perform in those close games, the breaks, the penalties, the turnovers, whatever it is. But you feel like you're going to compete every game. That certainly wasn't the case under Lovie Smith. And that's probably good. This season is going to come down to is all these close games. I mean, Illinois was 1-4 in one possession games in the Big Ten last year. I know the refs made some key calls in those things, but Illinois also wasn't able to win those, whether it was players making a mistake, a coaching call, red zone, all those different things. And that's why this season, I feel like there's going to be plenty of opportunity here, but can they be that team? Can they be the first team since what did I write it? Since 89-90, Joey, that won 8+ games in back-to-back years, that made back-to-back bowls for the first time since Ron Zook got fired, right? Like, and started 6-0, goes 0-6. Like this path to sustained success, which is the whole goal of Josh Whitman and Bret Bielema, it starts here. Like now is the time you prove it.
Yeah, it is. And you're right. Like if that 21 year, I'm thinking it's at Maryland, right? The home loss, the Blake Jarosati catch game, UTSA at home, Purdue. Like, I think the narrative of this, like this column that you wrote today could have been a year ago, right? If a couple of those close games flip, then you're starting to feel, because there's still a little bit of trepidation among the fan base, like, this is new. I don't know about this.
Because every time there's been expectations, Joey, the rug has been pulled out from under. I get it. I get the reaction of, I don't like 3 or 4 Big Ten network analysts, and maybe there's a little bit of hot take to that, so they can come back in 3 months and say they called it. But 3 or 4 calling, what was it, Jerry DiNardo, Mike Hall, and Howard Griffith. Griffith obviously biased. But all those guys saying Illinois is going to be in the Big Ten West. Oh, whoa. They're like, hey, let's be the underdog. We're comfortable being the underdog here.
But how, I don't think they're not the pick, right? I don't know that you and I would pick Illinois to do that today. But it's not like that's the hottest take that's ever been mentioned either. So I think that's what I think is the big change is someone can say that and people, in the Big Ten footprint or even Illinois fans would say I'm not seeing it.
It's like picking Penn State to win the East, right? Like I think Penn State's a top 10 team in the country based on what they're bringing back, and their quarterback's very talented. But I mean, that's a bold call. Like it's hard to pick them over Ohio State and Michigan. Illinois, listen, I think Illinois is going to have a chance to if they execute, because I don't think the West is all that great. I would still have Iowa as the favorite. I get the ceiling of Wisconsin. I think there's a floor to Wisconsin that enough people don't talk about, but they got talent. They got a good coach. It's just a lot of newness there that I think makes them a little bit more vulnerable than being the favorite in the West.
Yeah, I think you're right there. But I guess the point is like this, the perception and the reality of Illinois football has changed, where if in November Illinois wins the West, I don't think people would say what a complete and total stunner. Like last year it would have been. Yes. Right? Like last year for sure would have been. I just think that's you see a program kind of growing up before your eyes. And I think that's the best way I can say it is 2 years ago, no. Last year, no. This year, okay. You could make that argument now. What Bret Bielema, coming full circle, the goal is to make that a realistic possibility. I know the West will not exist, but to kind of make that the floor, right? And make that 7-8 win area 6-8 it would probably be a better way, the floor of your program. And you're starting to see that maybe people are buying into that now.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Bret Bielema said, for the first time, I feel like we can win every game on our schedule. and Ohio State and Michigan not being on the schedule, but they almost beat Michigan at Michigan last year. So I think he'd say it even if they were. But he also said, we can lose every game. And I kind of agree with that. I don't think Florida Atlantic is going to beat Illinois. I don't think Northwestern is going to beat Illinois. But Toledo's got a chance. Kansas certainly. I think Kansas might be a favorite in that game based on them being at home. So I agree with that as well. All right, Joey, we will get into the 10 questions entering training camp, but what did we learn at Big Ten Media Days? We kind of talked about our impressions from Bielema, Whitman, who's great on the podcast. Definitely go back and listen to that. The law firm joining us, Johnny Newton, Keith Randolph was awesome as well. Any other Illini things you want to get out there?
There's two. I wrote about it in the 4 takeaways. So I want to start with like Bret Bielema. I didn't get it. It was a sense of false praise for his quarterback. I do his quarterback room. I do genuinely think that he feels better about this room than he has in the past. Remember, Art Sikowski was coming off of surgery going into last season. Tommy DeVito hadn't really played to the level that we had seen Tommy DeVito play in several years. I think he's genuinely excited about Luke Altmaier, the development of Donovan Leary and John Paddock. But here's the thing. You're not going to say, that's not it either. So, like, there was a little bit of lip service.
Last year at this time, he felt good about one quarterback because Art Sikowski was coming off of surgery, 2 surgeries. He did not say that to us at the time, right? Like, he did say, guys, if we get hurt at quarterback, look out now.
My bigger takeaway, and the one that you and I had talked about for a little bit after media days and since, that 1-5, 1-4 stretch to close the season, like that eats at Bret Bielema.
It should.
It should, because what was on the other side of that, right? If you go 2-3, you probably got a different scenario. Obviously, if you win the bowl game, it doesn't change anything. But he mentioned that a few times, and like pretty unprompted. It wasn't like, Bret, you went 1-5 last or 1-4 to close the season. What do you think? He brought that up, and that's a new one for him to close the season like that. And I think it truly does not him, because I think he realizes what could have been. And to be fair, like, he wasn't saying our guy, like, he wore a lot of the blame. Like, what could I have done differently? He circled the Purdue game as, hey, I emphasized Wisconsin, I emphasized Iowa, I emphasized Northwestern, and maybe I didn't draw a big enough circle around Purdue. That game, Jeremy, as we know, shifted the way the West went to go down there. So I think there was a lot of and I'm looking forward to ask Bret this at some point in training camp, a lot of self-reflection on how that went down, and injuries played a role, and someone will say the refs played a role, and there were certainly some bad calls down the stretch, but that was a big one for me. Is he bookmarked that, and that's something that I think he's going to bring up and has brought up a lot to his team.
Yeah, and I thought the way Isaiah Williams presented it, and I'm sure Bret Bielema probably presented this because usually they echo their head coach.
There you go.
It sucked for last year for what they wanted, for their goals. They fell short of what they could have accomplished, because whether it was not taking an opponent seriously or feeling themselves, as Bret Bielema was kind of suggesting that they had arrived, and maybe overlooking Michigan State and Purdue. They certainly didn't overlook Michigan and Northwestern. But Isaiah Williams said, we had the chance to win a lot of games, which honestly going into next year builds confidence, knowing that we could win every game we go into if we do the right things. But also we lost some games at the end that we felt we should have won. So that put a chip on our shoulder. I feel that's a unique feeling to have both. Usually somebody's confident, but they won't really have that chip. I feel like going into next season, we got both. We got that confidence knowing we can go into every game to win. We also got that chip knowing that we have something to prove, knowing that we left a lot out there last year. We're looking forward to fixing that this year. Like, that's a positive for this year, right? Like, you still have that chip on your shoulder. Like, man, we got unfinished business. Bret Bielema used that word, that phrase, unfinished business, that they thought they should have won the West, and they blew it last year, which they did. They also had a breakthrough season. They gained a lot of confidence knowing, hey, we're better than Wisconsin. We're better than Iowa. We'll see if they are this year, but they were last year. I think that's great to know that you have both, and I'm interested to see if they can maintain that and maintain the confidence and then build off the unfinished business.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I asked Bret Bielema about the confidence, and he said you can't really fake it. Like, people try to fake it, and I should pull up the exact quote, but it's a really hard thing to fake. Let me find it here. I always say there's fake confidence all the time, and a lot of people try to play it off as real, but it comes shallow or doesn't resolve in the most difficult moments. These guys have it real now. Yeah. And I think, like, for as much as the outside perception of Illinois has changed, and I know on our podcast with Johnny Newton and Keith Randolph, they had talked about it. I would encourage people to go back and listen in terms of kind of what you feel when an opponent comes in to play you and how that has evolved over their careers. I think a lot of it was shifting the perception of that program from inside it. And I think Bret Bielema has done a good job, and Isaiah Williams has talked about how that confidence starts with him and that swagger and that kind of bravado. We've noticed it. I mean, come on, we talked to Bret Bielema enough times. Anyone who's seen a camera in his face has noticed it. I think like that is a real thing that they have now. And now you're talking about guys like Isaiah Williams, Keith Randolph, Johnny Newton, Isaiah Adams down the line. Like, that's just kind of the norm. And again, that goes back to a program kind of growing up a little bit before our eyes. And again, you got to maximize this season to do it. But I think a big thing of what Bret Bielema needed to do was shift the confidence inside of that building, and he's done it. And to your point, when he said we can also lose every game, and I know Isaiah Williams in your quote alluded to that too, Bret Bielema was not talking to us. He did not want – he wanted his guys to know they believe in him, but they sure as heck better not slack in those key moments down the stretch. And like that message, he does a really good job of getting messages to resonate with his guys.
Yeah. The other thing that was pretty newsy, and I talked about it with Whitman, was Bret Bielema dropping in his press conference that he had no compete clause with Big Ten teams. He said he suggested it. We still need to confirm the actual language of the contract, but Whitman obviously confirmed it. Bielema said it. People around Illinois were telling us about it. They were happy that he put that out there. That's pretty significant. I look at it, Wisconsin, Nebraska, he was speculated there. It's the Iowa clause. I mean, we even had Iowa writers, our friends David Eichelt and Sean Bach asking us, do you think Bret ultimately ends up at Iowa? And it's like, I don't think so, because I don't think he wants to be the guy after the guy, but it is his alma mater, all those things. Well, not having that no compete for the next 6 years, I think Ferentz is going to be there for a little bit while longer. But I think that tells you that he wants to be here. I just always have thought, and it's based on what we've talked about with Whitman, how he sold this job to Bret Bielema. And I think, Bret Bielema was the guy after the guy at Wisconsin. I don't think he wants to be that after Ferentz. I think he wants to be the Hayden Fry of Illinois. I think he wants to be the Barry Alvarez of Illinois. And I think this shows that. And how he got rewarded with that no compete clause, he got a raise from $4.2 million to $6 million, right? And then that goes up year after year, retention bonus, all these things. Illinois made him a very rich man. He's built a monstrosity of a house in Champaign. They just got in that house. They're still finishing it up. I think he wants to be here for a long time. And I think he and Whitman are a long-term partnership here, Joey, as long as Bielema continues to have success, obviously.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the Iowa clause is exactly right. You and I have talked about this. I don't know if it's been on here, but certainly in many of our road trips around wherever we've gone. I don't know that he would have gone, but I think that's the program that would have really pulled at his heartstrings the most, right? And I think the one that would have really made him think the most about it now takes that off the table. And again, I never thought he was going to go, but I don't think it would have been an easy decision if it would have come down to that. And the no compete clause takes that out of it. Again, like you said, we would like to see the contract, and I know we've put in requests for that. But Bret Bielema isn't going to stand up there on the Big Ten Network in front of everybody and say, I've got this, and then not really have that. And Josh Whitman isn't going to step into 2 or 3 microphones and say he has this and not really have that. That is like the last thing you would lie about in a situation like that. So, yeah, I mean, that was a pretty big piece of news to put out there. And Bret Bielema, let's be honest, Jeremy, has a very good sense of the conversations around him. Mm-hmm. That was not like an accident. Then afterwards, they had to get together with Whitman and be like, hey, oh boy, that's out there now. I think that was very intentional.
We're going to get foiled now by 4 media outlets.
Yeah, like that was an intentional drop. And Bret Bielema is really good at that. He's got a little book, and he knows what he wants to talk about, and he wanted to bring that up. And
sometimes to the point there, it deviates from what we actually ask. I hit these 3 points. Hold on, Wagner.
It did. I will say Bret Bielema kind of stole the news cycle from the Tuesday prior. I'm being a little over the top. There was a lot more news at Big Ten Media Days than that. But announcing Jim Leonhard on Tuesday as a senior analyst, You put out that no compete clause nugget on Wednesday. Bret Bielema knows how to get, like, we're not a complicated bunch. He knows how to get our attention.
Yeah, let's bring that up. We haven't talked about that here yet too much on the podcast. Hiring Jim Leonhard. Like, somebody DM'd us about this during the spring, right? We're like, I don't know about that. Jim obviously has a relationship with Bret Bielema dating back to when he played at Wisconsin, and Bielema was his defense coordinator for his final year. But the more and more this, comes out, it makes so much sense for them, especially now that we know the setup. We know Jim Leonhard never wanted to leave Wisconsin. Like, he never wanted to leave there. His family lives there. I think they want to live there forever. But obviously he did not get the head coaching job. Chris McIntosh goes and hires Luke Fickell, and who can blame him for what Fickell's record is. But for a guy who's probably going to make the leap to the NFL or be a college head coach, and it seems like I think he's going to be a college head coach next with the way Bielema has talked about this, it makes sense that he can be in Champaign from Sunday to Thursday, go home, be with his family over the weekend. And what a resource that is for Aaron Henry without being threatening, right? Like, because if Jim Leonhard's in the press box, on Saturdays, and Henry calls a play, is he going to get credit for it? That if it works out, if Jim Leonhard's sitting in the press box, I think this was a nice fit to have somebody do that. And I think, getting back to the head coach thing, Bret Bielema talked about how he hasn't been involved a lot with special teams and offense. He's going to get him involved with those things. And I think that's to set him up to be a head coach. What level that's at, whether it's FBS or, Power 5, whatever it is, Jim Leonhard's a hot commodity, man. He was at the end of last year, and I know he's interviewed for Power 5 head coaching jobs before. And it seems like that's the goal here is to take this year off, let Wisconsin pay him $1 million for their buyout, and then try and get a head coaching job wherever that is.
Yeah, I mean, Bret Bielema's coach. I mean, he's got a nice little coaching tree during his own coaching career. This definitely feels like a head coach training seminar.
Yes,
I mean, that's exactly what it feels like to me. And I think you can go back and look. Obviously, the most recent being Ryan Walters. Like, the guys have graduated from his program to have that, and I think Jim Leonhard recognizes that maybe there was something in his own process he felt like he could improve on. Maybe that's having a deeper offensive plan, having a more hands-on special team approach, whatever the case may be. We've not talked to Jim Leonhard, but Bret Bielema's history suggests that if you want to go get a seminar on how to be a head coach, you don't have to stand in front of microphones during the week. You don't have to be there on the weekend. You can go be with your family. This is a pretty win-win gig, and you still get $1 million from Madison for existing and helping coach a rival. And
you lost one of the best defense coordinators in the Big Ten, and you just gained one. Like, that's
for like probably $45,000.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
Now we don't say that to minimize. Like, if you're Aaron Henry, you've got to be pumped that you've got somebody who, like, I don't know that this would work as well if Aaron Henry and Jim Leonhard didn't have a long-term friendship, relationship, however you want to describe it, because like that's kind of a big name to bring in when you're a first-time DC and somebody with a lot of success and a lot of history. But I think it works that they know each other. I'm sure Aaron Henry knows Jim Leonhard isn't trying to start a life in Champaign, right? Like, that my read is come here for a year, go away, but be a really good resource for Aaron Henry, for Antonio Fernellis, for a coaching staff that's trying to come together. Like, I don't want to minimize that in any way, shape, or form, because I think that really matters. But I think, like, this job, you probably have to zoom out a little bit and see it for what it is. And it's a head coach training program.
Yeah, pretty good one for both sides, I would think. All right, other things, Northwestern fallout. I thought David Braun put his best foot forward to be the spokesman of that program. I read one quote where he said, hey, listen, I'm supporting my players for not showing up to this, but I wanted to show them that I'm going to face the music. Like, I'm going to be out here. He didn't have all the answers, and I don't expect him to, but he was out there. He was public, unlike his AD, Derek Cragg, who had one interview from what I know with our guy, Adam Rittenberg at ESPN. And he seems to have the support of Michael Schill at this point, but Michael Schill not really doing a lot of interviews either. So it was at least some form of leadership, accountability, even though he really didn't have much to do with that. Now, some of his staff are mentioned and named in all of these things, but kudos to him for showing up. I just wanted to mention that. And, we got word of the front office sports report about Minnesota. I thought PJ Fleck came out firing, and I thought he handled it really, really well. We'll see if any follow-ups happen to that. PJ Fleck's had been accused of some of these things. I know a lot of people don't like him. I don't love the personality, but I thought he came out and really defended himself really, really well the other day. So we'll see if anything comes out of that. And the new coaches, I thought Luke Fickell was really impressive. I think he's going to do well at Wisconsin. I don't know if it all happens right away. And then obviously we were able to talk with Ryan Walters, just one of my favorite guys I've ever covered. I'm just really interested to see how that goes the first 2 years. It's a really young staff, exciting staff. They're recruiting really well. I believe in Ryan, the leader, but it's just a different fit for Purdue, for a first-time coach in the Big Ten when the Big Ten looks like it's as good as ever. So just a couple impressions from the other coaches there, Joey.
Yeah, I think to circle back quickly to David Braun, I think a lot of people who are in hiring roles are probably going to circle back to that. Now, you're going to investigate everything he did know, he didn't know. All of that's obvious. But I think in terms of his career, like standing up there and going out there and answering those, I think a lot of people who make hires are going to remember that and circle that, because he really wasn't around, right? And he went out there and did it. There's still a lot more. I don't even know where to begin with Northwestern. There's a lot more to dive into, but I think that earned him points long-term, career-wise, provided everything else checks out.
It's just the one thing I keep coming back to is he was out there on the podium in front of the cameras, answering questions all day. And then you had Derek Gregg in like the bowels of the stadium setting up one interview. I just,
it's not good.
And he explained it to Rittenberg as, I'm letting my president be the forward-facing guy. It's like, dude,
where was he at? Where was he at in Indy then?
You're the athletic director with 4 or 5 lawsuits against your programs, including some of your hires and oversight of this. Like, it's just, I know it all didn't happen under Derek Gregg, and obviously Jim Phillips has to answer questions, and he has, but at least he's answered some questions. Like, Derek Gregg has not been in front of a camera yet.
No, it's not.
It's not
a bad look, man. It's a bad look. New coaches, man. Can we just pull back the curtain a little bit? Bret Bielema was the first coach to speak at the podium on Wednesday. I was not really I watched David Braun because that's when our timeline kind of opened. But what it looks like when a head coach goes and all the media there that covers that school, there's like a one-on-one media scrum. Those are the videos you see that you upload with Bret Bielema and Josh Whitman. And then we're writing. We tried to get some of the cold lunch meat sandwiches. I ate a half a loaf of bread.
He did.
During those. So, I didn't see a lot of the other ones on Wednesday, to be honest with you. I saw more on Thursday because we weren't chasing Bret Bielema around or Johnny Newton or Keith Randolph or Isaiah Williams. That's not a complaint. Obviously, we go there to talk about them, but I probably should go back and watch some of the other Wednesday podium sessions. And I know the Big Ten Network uploaded all of, they have everybody go up to the desk, players, coaches. Bret Bielema was pretty good up there. I learned quite a bit from that. We should probably pay more attention to that because he actually said some things on there. But yeah, man, Luke Fickell is an impressive guy. He's an impressive guy. You don't get that resume by not being impressive.
Yeah, it's a good fit. The other thing is, it was just a reminder, listen, I think Bret Bielema got a little upset about it. We were just like, okay, we're going long enough. But to have CBS, NBC, Fox all represented at that thing, I thought was really, really interesting that you had all of these networks, these huge networks. I know ESPN's the biggest name in sports, but you have CBS, NBC, Fox. And it's just a reminder that starting a little bit this year, but also next year, you have a Big Ten game on Fox at 11 a.m. You have CBS at 2:30 and then a primetime NBC game. That's big time. It just feels a little bit different. I know a lot of games are still going to be on FS1 and BTN, but man, they are in bed with these big networks. I know streaming, cable, maybe the network doesn't matter as much, but to be honest with you, with all the cuts at ESPN, Joe, and I know ESPN does games pretty well, But CBS, NBC, Fox, they still do unbelievable jobs promoting these games. And I still think just having them over the air broadcast is just a massive deal. And 1.2 billion per year coming to the Big Ten. It's a reminder of how big the Big Ten is compared to when we're looking at the Pac-12, maybe struggling to get 30 million a year for each of its schools, and the Big Ten is going to be over 80. It's just a reminder that the Big Ten and SEC are just completely different level.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. 9 hours, give or take, of football, Big Ten football across major networks every Saturday. It's pretty good, man.
And if Illinois is good, they get one of those every once in a while, right?
They do, and you're starting to see it, right? Illinois got big noon kickoff for the Penn State game. Reports are they're playing the night game at Purdue. That'll be a fun one. I'm kind of looking forward to the bye week already because I guess I've not talked to you about travel, but my travel is going to be to my couch and watching college football all day, I hope. It's good, man. If you're a Big Ten football fan, it's a lot of national broadcasts and it's just a lot of inventory to see your teams play. I think that's the big one.
All right, guys, first impressions matter. There's no two ways around it. And your face, well, that's most likely the first thing that someone notices about you. How your skin looks is going to determine good or bad that first impression. I decided it's time to put my best face forward and started using Caldera Lab to do so. Clinically proven to reduce wrinkles, fine lines, and signs of aging, Caldera Lab is the leader in men's skincare and is here to save the day and your confidence. Use our exclusive code Illini at calderalab.com to enjoy 20% off their best products. Listen, guys, I'm skeptical too. Men's skincare, we all want to be manly. We don't need that stuff. But I know you care about those wrinkles, those bags under your eyes. And why not look good? It helps us in life, helps our confidence. So take care of your skin, and Caldera Lab helps you do that. They create high-performance men's skincare products, and the regimen is your twice-a-day formula to transform your skin. And the best part, it's super easy. Literally takes 30 seconds in the morning and 30 seconds at night. This little time for the huge benefits is compounding interest I can get behind all day long. Now to the fun stuff. What products does Caldera offer? Let me tell you. First off, the Clean Slate starts and ends your day. This face wash leaves all skin types refreshed. Then you'll apply the base layer right after to moisturize and hydrate your skin. Even better, it absorbs fast, leaving you with a matte finish to start your day confidently. Then the good, it's your go-to night face serum rounded out. And then want to take things a step forward, the Icon is the eye serum that helps you shine while addressing the three most common skin concerns around the eyes: fine lines, dark circles, and puffiness. Caldera Lab is made with top-tier ingredients, legit showstopper that is good for you today and in the long run. Right now, get 20% off with our code at calderalab.com. That's 20% off at calderalab.com by using code Illini. Jump into skin and first impression royalty with Caldera Lab. All right, Joey, let's focus on Illinois football's training camp because it is almost here. We still got to get our schedule of everything that happens. And just a reminder, training camp under Bret Bielema has been very closed. We usually get to see some stretching. He said maybe that'll change this year. I highly doubt it. I really highly doubt it. So it's unlike the Bret Bielema era, Ron Zook era, Tim Beckman era, Bill Cubit, whatever it was, where we got to see a lot more and kind of give you updates of who was good in each practice. We're not going to be able to get that, but we do get to talk with players. We get to see the players. We get to usually see who's here, who's doing well, and all of that. But I figured we could do 10 questions entering training camp. And I think we know some main things. We've talked about a lot of things. So I'm just going to throw some fun questions at you that can cover some good topics. And I thought this was a fun one. Who's the offense's top playmaker? And by that, I mean, who has the most yards from scrimmage on the Illini offense this year, Joey? Who would be your pick?
I mean, can we do like the non-Isaiah Williams category? Because my bet would be Isaiah Williams. It's impossible for me right now to think it's anyone else. Because I think the running backs would be your next option, but who do you pick? Because it sounds like it's going to be a committee approach. So until further,
yeah. Hold on. Here's the debate I have in my head. If it were Isaiah Williams or an Illinois running back, I would side with an Illinois running back just because of Bret Bielema's history of 1,000-yard running backs. And for Isaiah Williams, he can get 100 catches and still have under 1,000 yards, right? And most of his rushes are not really rushes; they're receiving yards. So I think I would go a running back here. I think Isaiah Williams is the easy bet to get the most yards, definitely over 800 for me. For Isaiah Williams, I think he's going to be a huge playmaker, and I think they're going to try and stretch the field a little bit more. Wrote about that a little bit this week. And I think Reggie Love is the most trustworthy back, but Bret Bielema loves Josh McCray. So I'm going to go with a little bit of a bold pick and go Josh McCray because I think he's the most likely to get like 180 to 200 carries. So I'm going to go with Josh McCray is my answer for this.
I mean, that's a fair.
Isaiah Williams would be the favorite in Vegas if we were doing odds. I would agree with that.
I worry about how the splits go running back wise to take Josh McCray, because it could end up you have like 2 700-yard rushers.
Correct.
Which is, by the way, a pretty good rushing attack if that's how that circles out to be.
It'd be about the same as last year, and I keep coming back.
It was a good rushing attack last year.
It was good. It wasn't great. But if you look back at it, like
Illinois, you're right.
Illinois was like 50-something in the country rushing yards per game. They were 7th in the Big Ten in rushing yards per game. So I get it. Chase Brown was unbelievable. He was a superstar. But I
think Josh McCray healthy makes that great last year.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. But it was one guy that was doing all of this for what was actually like a middle of the pack rushing attack. So I think Bret Bielema would be disappointed if it were like 700.
Am I playing music?
To be honest with you.
Oh, man, I thought I've been playing music over here. Have you heard music?
No.
I got these new earbuds. I'm sorry. I just completely went off. Every time I adjust them, I think it might be maps playing. I don't know where this music's coming from.
Yes.
I think so. I don't know where it's coming from. See, this is why I use wired headphones, because I have no earthly idea where this music is coming from.
Is it like pairing to one of your other devices?
It's not to my phone. My laptop is, well, it's not Yacht Rock, and that was what I was last listening to on my laptop. Oh, I'm sorry to distract this whole time. Like it had done it earlier. I was like, was that Jeremy?
I saw your face. I'm like, he's not hearing me right now. He's hearing something else.
I think I heard the yes. But I didn't. I freaked out before I could actually listen to what it was.
Great song.
So I'm sorry. What did you say before
I don't even remember. I think Bret Bielema would be disappointed if it were like 700. I think he'd want like 1,000 and a 700.
And then a 250.
Yeah, something like that. Go like Jordan Anderson or Aiden Laufrey, maybe a Caden Dragon.
I'm with you. When I read that though, to the final point, like I thought, how could are we just going to talk about Isaiah Williams for a whole segment, which is fine because he's really good. But that was I like that. It was. Admittedly, I didn't do a ton of research into this before we talked.
It was really who's going to lead in rushing? Is it Josh McCray or Reggie? I think Reggie Love's going to have every opportunity. Like I just think the staff trusts him the most. But I know Bielema loves McCray. The whole John Clay comparisons. Isaiah Williams would be the smart pick. He'd be the odds-on favorite because it could be Love or McCray. So it was just a way to discuss that. Kind of another way to do this. How many skill players top 500 yards from scrimmage? Last year, Joey, it was 2. Chase Brown and Isaiah Williams. I went with 4.
So I'm writing this down. I'm telling you, I really should. I was writing when you sent this. I didn't do it. I think it's 4.
Yeah. Isaiah Williams, Josh McCray, Reggie Love, Pat Bryant.
That's exactly who I had. Who's your dark horse to get in there? It'd have to be Casey Washington.
He's gonna get a lot of reps. So yeah, if maybe Pat Bryant got hurt, Casey Washington maybe get some more big plays. He'd have to have a couple big plays, and that just hasn't been his game.
His bread and butter is like an 8-yard catch for a first down.
We're going to talk about the freshman wide receivers coming up here. I don't think either of those guys gets in this.
I would not feel comfortable putting that on there now. Those are really high expectations.
No, we've already seen Pat Bryant be a really good Big Ten receiver, or at least a good starting receiver. Can he be like an all Big Ten guy? I think he can be. So I wouldn't be surprised. And Barry Lundy freaking loves him, Pat Bryant. So I think he's going to get a ton of usage. Anybody like Tip Ryman's not hitting that, right?
I don't think so. It'd have to be a wide receiver or a third running back. And I don't think it's either one of those things. Also, to just have 2 last year, like the offense was much better. And I think like that stat alone shows you how much more room for growth this offense has.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, I used 500 last year. Hightower had 450 and Bryant had 450. So they were pretty close to it. More solidified as a starter on your projected depth chart. Josh Kreutz or Dylan Rosiak?
I think it's Josh Kreutz.
I agree with you. Like they had looked for so long for an upgrade at center, and then spring ball happened, and they added JUCO Will Lease. But and I don't know how much of it is just PR, but we've heard a different tone about Josh Kreutz here. lately, right? I think he had a really strong spring. There are questions about, can he hold up against like Keanu Benton level nose tackles? So it's going to be difficult for him. But I think he's got the mindset, the intelligence, the leadership, and just the nastiness. So they're singing his praises a little bit more publicly. I'm interested to see what he looks like if we get to see it during camp. But I do think Josh Kreutz is unquestionably right now the starting center.
Yeah, I'm with you. Josh Kreutz doesn't lack for confidence. Like, I'll tell you, I had heard just over the course of time since the season ended, like there were times last year it's like, hey, I could go start over Alex Pihlstrom.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, dude, he's like all Big Ten and he's now with the Saints. And like, that's just Josh Kreutz's mindset. Like, I don't think some guys, when you look, and Illinois was like pretty aggressively looking for transfers like that. You cannot hide that or phrase that any differently. I don't like, some guys might get a little like looking over your shoulder. Like I don't get the sense and people I've talked to that Josh Kreutz was that guy. I think it was just like, all right,
I'll beat him.
Well, and not like, yeah, that's right. Like, not like, all right, I don't care, but like he believed in himself enough to know like, this is my job. And I think Bret Bielema mentioned on the Big Ten Network, like he had a really good summer when he talks, and you and I know that's, at least in our interactions, not the most frequently, but like people listen in the room. And I think that matters. And they ask, like Bart Miller will tell you, he said it on the record 100 times, like they ask a lot of centers in this offense. And Josh Kreutz is now going into his third year in that understanding of what they ask of centers, and in his second year with Barry Lunney. Will Lees doesn't have that.
Yep.
Like, I just think that it's either Josh Kreutz, or I would even argue like someone like Zach Barlev, who has been around and who knows would be somebody who would be competing with Will Lees. But it's hard for me to think Josh Kreutz in the starting center at this point. And I wouldn't have said that 5 months ago.
I don't think he's going to play, but he's gained a lot of strength. And like TJ McMillan has a semester over Will Lees. So like even those guys, Joey Okla, he's been playing more guard than center. But yeah, I agree. It's Kreutz. Rosiak, I think, is going to play a lot, whether it's the Isaac Darkangelo role or whatever. I do think we can see a scenario where they start one linebacker, 5 DBs, 5 basically defensive linemen, basically a 5-1-5. Or Kenenna Odeluga starts as kind of the overhang. CJ Hart played that a lot last year, so I could see that as well. So I do think Kreutz is starting.
You know, it gives me a little back to the like a tie back to the new coaches discussion. You've got to have 5 DBs. It sounds like when you're playing Wisconsin this year, when you're playing Purdue, and that hasn't changed. But Graham Harrell, he's a guy who wants to spread it out a little bit. I think we probably will see that out of Matt Rule at Nebraska. Like 5 DBs is going to become a lot more the norm than not. If it already hasn't, it probably already has. So I think the way the West is shifted, that's kind of where it goes.
More likely starter, Jordan Slaughter or Josh Gesky?
Boy, it's like you took my I'm doing a top position battles. I'm going to lean towards Gesky because he can play guard or tackle. So, you know, if maybe you don't like what Zy Chrysler gives you at guard, I'm sorry, like I think they want to move Chrysler to tackle, but maybe you don't like that.
This up for people who are listening. Left tackle, Julian Pearl. Left guard, Isaiah Adams. One of the best sides of an offensive line in the Big Ten outside of Ann Arbor, right? Like Michigan's offensive line is ridiculous. Josh Kreutz at center. Zy Chrysler will start at one guard or tackle after missing the spring. Gesky started at tackle during the spring. Slaughter at guard during the spring. Now it sounds like those two are going to compete for a starting job. I expect Chrysler to stay at tackle.
I do too. I think it's trending that way. But I lean towards Gesky because just in case, right? Like you got a guy who took all sorts of first team right tackle reps in spring. He can do that. You and I have not seen him at guard. So that would be interesting. We've seen Jordan Slaughter at guard. So I think Jordan Slaughter is going to get every chance if they keep Chrysler at tackle to win that starting guard spot. And he might, I say Gesky because of versatility. Like that's where I lean that way.
And I will say, with this staff, they are willing to play a rotation, right? Like Jordan Slaughter played 300 snaps last year. So I do think that, especially if you got a guy who's kind of working in, I think all these guys are going to get their opportunities, and maybe this changes at some point during the season. But yeah, Slaughter for me, that injury seemed to set him back a little bit, and more like physically. Obviously, he missed an entire season. But just I think they want to see that nasty physical demeanor out of him. And Gesky obviously doesn't have experience like Slaughter, so that's working against him. But that's going to be interesting because obviously Slaughter, this is his last chance to be a Big Ten starter. So that's going to be a very interesting battle right there.
Where do you land then? Sorry, did I miss that?
Man, that's a great question. I haven't seen Gesky at guard. I really think Chrysler's going to start at tackle. So give me Slaughter just because I've seen him there, and I've seen him be serviceable as a starter. And man, when it's your last chance, I hope you would turn it up. So I'm sure Bart Miller is looking forward to that. So I'll go with Slaughter. I'll go with the old guy. More solidified as a starter, Joey. Defensive back version. Tyler Strain at corner or Demetrius Hill at safety. I'm going Strain.
Yeah, I am too. The thing that my hold up, when Bret Bielema was asked about the newcomers at Media Day and he was talking about Prince Ford, he made it, and remember, they got Prince Ford in the summer. This wasn't a pre-spring edition. He said, we were looking to add another corner. And it's like, okay, was that a depth piece? Did you not like what was there in terms of what you could, who could contribute this year? Like, that's where I kind of get held up. But I think in my mind, I think in a lot of minds, when you talk about that, like you immediately go to starter, and Bret Bielema at times is thinking gunner on punt return, right? Or something like that. So like I think it's Strain. I do think it's that
we learned that with Prather Hudson, I believe.
Oh my good God.
And Max Rosenthal is what we learned that with. Yeah, I'm going with Strain because I've seen it. I get it. Demetrius Hill, freshman All-American. It's a great headline, gets everybody excited. This guy's gonna be a star right away. I think he's got more competition, to be honest with you. Like Nicario, we are going to slate Matthew Bailey and Xavier Scott as two starters, right? Like that's how we feel. Matthew Bailey, whether it's strong or free, and Xavier Scott at nickel. Like that's how I feel it's going to be. So that means Demetrius Hill has got to fend off Nicario Harper, who is here in the spring, and Clayton Bush, who obviously Bret Bielema cannot speak enough about. Again, I don't know whether it's to be a backup and a gunner on special teams or whatever it is, but he speaks highly of him. So this is like the most intense competition I think there's going to be. Like for me, it's offensive line and then the safety spot. At corner, Prince Ford, Caleb Patterson, JUCO corners are brought in to compete. Strain was really good last year when he played. And he looked good in the spring when we saw him. But he had 172 snaps. It's a Pro Football Focus grade for take it for what it's worth, but 82 Pro Football Focus grade was third on the defense last year. Small sample size, but still big enough that it matters. 9 receptions on 18 targets, 2 interceptions, 2 pass breakups. He's not tall, doesn't have a lot of height to him, but he plays like Taz. He's got that demeanor to him. He breaks well on the ball. He's got great speed. He's got some production and experience. My concern with Taz and Strain is injury. Those guys have had some injury history. That's why I think it's important to have Prince Ford, Caleb Patterson, Elijah McCantos, these freshmen who are coming in. But Strain looked good in the spring. He looked good when he was on the field last year. I thought, better than even Xavier Scott was on the field last year. Now, he had a year of experience on him, but I'll go Strain because I think Demetrius Hill's got a battle on his hands.
And with you, Strain also looked noticeably bulked up.
Yep.
Which was like he came in and he's like, oh, this guy's like got track speed. I remember that was his commitment deal. Like this dude's super, super fast. And he is, but now he looks like bulked up and looks a little bit more like a Big Ten starter. I'll say, look, if like a guy like Prince Ford comes in and wins this job in fall camp, is that bad news for Illinois?
No.
I mean, the guy got here in the summer. So if he comes in and from the summer to September 2nd wins the job over Tyler Strain, who we know looked good every time we've seen him since really that Purdue game when he got in, I don't think that's bad news for Illinois. I don't know that I expect it. Yeah. I expect Strain to win that, but like that, they're starting to add depth there. And like you needed that.
And that's what they do with these JUCO guys and transfers. They seem to look for more for depth than like these stars that fans get really excited about outside of quarterback. All right, I want you to write the next answer on a piece of paper. Do you have a piece of paper by you, Joey?
How little do you think of me professionally?
I'm making you do. Hey, sometimes we don't need it any day. You got a notes app, you're fine. Because I'm really interested to see who you pick here. So besides quarterback, the most important backup on the team is blank.
You skipped over the little rundown we had. That's why I thought we were going to do.
Oh, sorry. I'll get to that question next.
Oh, gosh.
You have that answer ready? Besides quarterback, the most important backup on the team is.
This is stupid that I
This is where I
wrote
need
that.
the Jeopardy music.
I'm not thrilled about this. Give me one. Hold on. I should have prepared.
I'll let you think about that. And then I'll ask you this question while you're thinking about it. Gut feel, who's the backup quarterback?
Donovan Leary. I say that, but what happens if it's like an Iowa game from last year again, and you got a chance at home to make a statement where you are in the West? Do you put Donovan Leary out there, or do you go to John Paddock, who started 12 games last year?
That's the hard part about this schedule. I was thinking about this. Like, the hard part about this schedule is you don't have like a Charleston Southern on it. You don't have an Eastern Illinois on it. Where in that first game, get your feet wet, feel good about yourself, get these backups in. Maybe Toledo if everything goes great, but that's the MAC champion. I think it's like Toledo would probably beat Northwestern. Toledo would have a chance at Purdue. I mean, they got a chance against Illinois. Florida Atlantic is the weakest opponent probably on paper. Tom Herman's an interesting coach there. They always have some athletes, but I think Illinois will dominate in the trenches. But you don't have the chance to get Donovan Leary in there. You don't have a chance to get some of these younger guys in there. So that's the hard part about this schedule. So I think that's a great question, Joey. Are you willing? It's based on probably what they see in practice, that's for sure. But for that reason, I'd probably side with Paddock early in the season. But Donovan Leary got almost all the second team reps during spring.
I think there's a difference between the backup who takes the snaps from the backup center before the game and who goes out there in the middle of a Big Ten West race if you need one. Like, I think for everything we see in warmups, we'll probably say Donovan Leary, right? Like, I think there's a lot there. Like, they really, really like him. I think he's improved a lot. I know he's got 4 years of eligibility. Like, and I think John Paddock might get it. Like, he might get it. But, like, I just wonder what happens when it's back against the wall and you got a chance to make that statement. If you've got to go with someone else, who do you go with?
You just need somebody to compete, or do you need somebody to go win a game? It's an interesting question. It's an interesting question. I don't know. Barry Lunny and Bret Bielema have said great things about Donovan Leary. I think Paddock, you know what he is. He's faced those battles, right? He's played some Power 5 teams. So that's nice to have in your back pocket. And I think it's great for the room. You going Leary? I'll go. Let's go.
I am, but I put the caveat out there. Like, I'm going Leary, but I don't know if I believe that I'm going Leary. I think it is, though.
Would you say you're leery of going Leary?
Stop it. Stop it now. It's embarrassing.
All right. Do you have your answer besides quarterback, the most important backup on the team?
I do. And I even X'd out my first answer so you know how torn I was.
Can we put this up at the same time on our computer screens?
Yep.
All right.
Same.
You gotta put your paper up because you have Declan Dooley. Okay, there you go. Said McConnell. Both of us.
I had Declan Dooley. And that's why I was like, I can't believe I'm putting a punter, but I think it said McConnell.
I actually thought Declan Dooley too. So you and I are on the same page here. I mean, the explanation's right, easy, right? If Johnny Newton or Keith Randolph gets hurt, and I think Sed would be the guy behind Johnny. Most importantly, you need somebody that can play, and they're so young at the 3 technique, so inexperienced. But Sed McConnell, his 3rd season here at Illinois. We've heard from Terrence Jameson; he's taken a big leap. And to be honest with you, they need somebody that can rotate in there. They need somebody who can take 100 snaps from Johnny Newton, because I know how hard it is to take him off the field, but they need somebody that they can have Johnny Newton ready for the 4th quarter. Because let's be honest, the pass rush really struggled in the 4th quarter last year, and part of the reason the defense gave up some points late in the game. So I think Sed McConnell have a defensive rotation like that. Defensive line rotation is really important. Then you got to think of the future too. Sed McConnell's probably a starter next year.
Yep, all those reasons. They need him to be somebody who can be in the rotation, because there's not a lot there. I mean, you got Bryce Barnes would be in that mix, Denzel Daxon, but it's not the same. Sed McConnell can play the 3 technique. I don't think that's where they or can play nose. I don't know if they envision him there, Jeremy.
3 tech.
Man,
he'd be a great 3 tech. That's
sorry.
Ideal.
Yeah. Can we do that writing thing for the last 2 questions? We can talk through the next one and then.
Oh yeah. All right, let me get
that was fun. I got to mute this so I can crinkle some paper because
let me get some more paper here. All right, next one. This is like a version of the dating game. Which redshirt freshman will have the biggest impact? This is a very difficult question.
That's why I didn't want to write this one. Let's write the last two. We have two more. Kind of award season.
You don't want to write this one? All right.
We can. You know what?
I think we're gonna have the same answer with the next one. So
with the okay. So you want to write this one? Okay.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Oh heck.
All right. So which redshirt freshman will have the biggest impact for Illinois? Which is difficult because most of the guys who made an impact is true freshmen. Obviously, we expect to play big roles. Hank Beatty, Gabe Ackus, Matthew Bailey, Xavier Scott. We talked a lot about those guys. But this is the rest of the class. So, all right. You ready?
Yep. One. Hey,
Henry Boyer. Some Henry Boyer love here. We need a back.
Who's your second place?
Jordan Anderson, probably.
Yeah, I was torn between him and Sean Miller.
Sean
Miller has been healthy. Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of linemen here. I think Jared Beatty would play if he played any other position.
McCantos is interesting.
Yeah, McCantos might have a chance. James Krutz on special teams, I think is going to be a star there. But as far as like a rotational role, there's not a lot. I mean, Donovan Leary could be in that conversation if there's an injury. But I think Henry Boyer is going to crack that rotation with Tip Ryman and Griffin Moore. I think Jordan Anderson's got a chance. But I just feel like McCray and Love are going to get a huge chunk of those carries early on. So those would be my two picks. But Boyer's massive, good blocker. I think he takes the Luke Ford role, and I think he's a good red zone target. So he had a really strong spring from what I saw.
And they also need help there.
Yes.
They lost two of the three rotation guys in Luke Ford, Michael Marquez. Outside of Tip Ryman, who do you know for sure? Like, I think the two guys you think are in the rotation, if you're looking at a top three, are Griffin Moore and Henry Boyer alongside Ryman. So,
All right.
Land. Oh, God.
The Gabe Ackus Award for true freshmen who have the biggest impact. I think we're all at one position here, right?
Yeah, and we're really wasting a lot of paper. All right.
Cycle at the Werner household. All right, ready?
1, 2, 3. Oh, we flipped what I thought we were going to do.
There we go. You went with Canary Rocher, who I've been hyping up all off season, and we've been careful with the Malik Elzy hype, right? It's like, hey, let's not think Regis Ben's happening here, but I don't think that's happening here. But Malik Elzy's getting a lot of buzz, Isaiah Williams, the way he talked about him, Bret Bielema, the way he talked about him. I've said for a long time he's going to be in the 2 deep. I think Canary Wilcher is going to be in the 2 deep. Canari's got to compete with Hank Beatty a little bit for playing time. I think both those guys are going to be huge, important pieces of that wide receiver rotation beyond the starters of Isaiah Williams, Casey Washington, and Pat Bryant.
Yeah, this is speed for me. And like we know what Illinois wants to do and be more explosive. Jeremy Basley since spring. I'm like, hey, I think Malik Elzy's going to be in the rotation. I do think he's going to be in the rotation.
Take there, Wagner.
Fair. That's fair. But I just like we know on those drives to Indianapolis that Bret Bielema like really grills the guys going. Do you think Malik Elzy didn't come up in his talks with Isaiah Williams?
Like none of come up in his talks with Isaiah Williams.
None of that seemed like an accident where like they got in the car like, all right, what'd you talk about? And Isaiah's like, hey, I told him I really like Malik, and Bret was like, what? Because Bret also did that. So like, man, I think he's just physically can do it, but Wilcher's got the speed. I'm glad we didn't have the same person. We've had the same person a lot.
I think they're both going to play. All right, the last question entering training camp. The Matthew Bailey Award. This is the prize freshman to make an impact. This is a fun one. All right. Got a couple options here.
I do too. I think we're going to be the same one again, though.
Some of my guys coming into this class were obviously LZ, but Brandon Henderson, loved. I think he's a year away. Trey Smith, love. He's at the wrong position. Jaheim Clark, love. Is an underrated guy. Sabor Kareem could be one people talk about here. 3, 2, 1. Oh, there it is. Jeremiah Warren, the guy who's getting a lot of buzz lately. I mean, this is not from us just saying, oh, we like Jeremiah Warren. We've heard in the summer that they loved what they saw from him. I found it interesting. They offered some nose tackle prospects in the class of 2024, and they kind of backed off that in June after Jeremiah Warren got into some battles, and we heard Keith and Johnny talk about him. We heard Bret Bielema bring him up. So Jeremiah Warren, even though he's a freshman defensive lineman, they need defensive line in that rotation. He showed last year. I'll play Hunter Whitenack, even if it's just special teams. So I think the fact that we're hearing his name from multiple people is a sign that they think they got a good one there.
Yeah, my hesitation was true freshman defensive lineman. That's a really difficult Big Ten position to walk into as a freshman. I think he's stronger than maybe people thought, and he's a little quicker. Sounds like he's been quick early on in workouts. So
no starter in 2025 for sure, probably, right?
Yeah, I think so. Feels weird putting him in that like award because Matthew Bailey had such a big impact, and like Warren still got a Denzel Daxon in front of him. Obviously, T-Rod Edwards is going to be the starter. We don't even know if Warren, like, would you play Sed McConnell there over him? We saw that in the bowl game. Like, yeah. So I think there's a lot more in front of him than Matthew Bailey had. But let's be honest, we would have done this on July 31st last year. We sure would not have been saying Matthew Bailey.
No. Some other guys that like I like the early enrollees to make an impact. We mentioned Kenari Wilcher. Zach Tobey could be one. If because he was at second string corner for a little bit. Another guy I would put out there, JoJo Hayden. Hadn't heard much about him during the spring, but that's a role you can play special teams early on. He's interesting. Can he be like a Kanena Odeluga type of guy? I don't know if anybody's making as big of an impact as those wide receivers, but it's just a name that we've heard enough that I think it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, Colin Dixon probably gets an honorable mention.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good call. We should have mentioned him with the wide receivers, but it just feels like LZ is probably the guy over him. Then you added Alex Kapka Jones, but maybe Colin Dixon we're not focusing enough on because I liked him in this class too.
Yeah, he's really good tape coming out. So here's the thing, like it was hard. I'm glad that we had a lot of the same. Like if you're a fan and see like, oh, they had a lot of the same, that means there's not a big list of guys you need to come out and play as a redshirt or true freshman. Like that is a sign of a growing up program that you've got veterans in front of them who can go out there and you're not relying on the 2017 or 2018 offensive line again.
All right, here's a fun question. Does a true freshman in football, like Malik Elzy, does he make a bigger impact than Dre Gibbs Lawhorn makes in basketball? Cross sport question for you to leave this pod.
Oh God.
I would probably set like this is basketball. Dre Gibbs Lawhorn and they need a guard. I would set Dre Gibbs Lawhorn expectations higher than any other freshman in football. And that's the way it's supposed to be because it's really hard to make an impact in football. The positions it's easiest are probably running back, wide receiver, defensive back, because if you're a good enough athlete and you're big enough, you can do those things. It's hard to be big enough to play offensive line, running back, quarterback, unless you're a 5-star guy. It's really hard. And even those guys, most of them, unless you're Trevor Lawrence, are going to have a hard time. Tua. So yeah, this is the sign of a healthier program that we're not mentioning 10 freshmen as starters as we were in 2017 and 2018.
Kids grow up so fast, Jeremy. Someone is going to yell at us for not mentioning Caden Fagan. So let's just get that now. I mean, there's a lot of running backs in front of him. And I think he knows, I think Illinois knows it's a steep learning curve, a steep adjustment, and you just don't need him to be a 4-star prospect as a freshman.
Now, can he beat out Jordan Anderson? Maybe, but I just saw Jordan play pretty well in the spring. So I'm not there yet. I think Caden could play if they needed to in a role because he's physically ready. That is for sure. But that's nice that if there's a chance you can redshirt a guy like that, that's a sign of a healthier program, a veteran program, unlike the last regime where it was so underclassmen heavy.
Yeah, and look, they're also very high on his long term.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't say that trying to like temper expectations for stuff we've heard. They're exceptionally high on what he can be long term. It's just you don't need long term to be the 2023 season.
Yep.
If it is, and I don't think it will be, but if it is, great news for Illinois, better news for Caden Fagan. Otherwise, you can just kind of let the natural progression of guys happen.
If there wasn't Jordan Anderson, who plays a lot like him, and has kind of played at a higher high school level, I would say Caden Fagan. Like, he would have been in my conversation here, but I think Jordan Anderson kind of has that role if he wants it. All right, anything else before we get out of here, Joey?
What are you most looking forward to about training camp starting, other than the obvious work things? Like, is there anything that you're like, you know what? I miss that this summer.
Just availability. It's nice. Just being able to talk to these people. One of my favorite parts is kind of like, because we get the major players in training camp. Like, you're going to have the major stories, the major storylines. Obviously, Luke Altmaier, quarterbacks, and the competitions, all of that. When we get to like third week of September or August, and we get to like do some of the deeper dives into some of these players and get to know them a little bit more, that's one of the most fun parts. I mean, one of the funnest parts about this job is meeting all the people, right? Not only in this profession, but just with these teams. You get to meet players from all these different places, tell great stories, and follow their careers. That's the most fun of watching nervous Sidney Brown in his first couple interviews, and then at his draft party, right? Like, and he's making the NFL and playing for the NFC champion. Like, that's the fun part of this. So getting to know these guys a little bit better. Like, I've talked with Taz Nicholson, but I'm going to get to know him a lot better this year. That's the thing. Like, there's some different go-to media guys with Johnny Newton, Keith Randolph, Isaiah Williams, certainly our go-to media guys.
Barnes.
Yeah, Tariq Barnes. We're going to get to know Reggie Love a lot more, Josh McCray a lot more. Seth Coleman doesn't love talking, but he's probably going to talk a little bit more. Gabe Ackus is going to talk a little bit more. So
Dylan Rosiak is probably going to be in that conversation.
Yeah. So it's always fun to get to know those guys a little bit more and what makes them tick and what they're like as humans.
Yeah, I think like now I'm going through like which deep cuts on that third week, second and a half week, third week.
Hank Beatty,
Ezekiel Holmes.
Mm-hmm.
I think his story of finally getting that, and then he gets injured early on in the season, and it looked like it's pretty gnarly. And to come back, and we'll see what his full availability is for training camp. You start getting down that list, the Henry Boyers of the world. It's like, all right, now, like, because that's
you and I, Ethan, yeah,
dude. Like, those are the fun stories. We don't mean to say like there's nothing. We don't enjoy talking to Isaiah Williams or Keith Randolph or Johnny, because we very much do. But we were in Indy. It's like, how much more? Like, we've covered Isaiah, every part of you covered, especially going back to him as a recruit, like every part of this guy's story. Yeah. Keith and Johnny, we've talked to so much. So fun guys to talk to. They give really good insight on what's going on. But training camp's a lot about stories, especially as you get into it. So getting into that neck of the woods will be fun. Sean Miller, man.
All right, man. Joey Wagner, appreciate you, man.
Appreciate it. See you on Thursday.
All right, everybody have a great day. Take care of each other. Follow us wherever you get your podcast. Check us out on YouTube as well. But everybody have a great day. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer Podcast.